Hi, and welcome to the Zero Wasted Days podcast. I am Suzanne. I am a former C-level executive turned seven-figure serial entrepreneur. I'm a life-first business mentor, and I love helping women entrepreneurs merge strategy, feminine energetics, and embodiment to create outside-the-box business solutions and energetic solutions to their business challenges. I believe that it's time that we shift our perspective on business and life and see that our businesses are the means to us living life first. Reinventing the way that we go about our days as entrepreneurs, this podcast is designed for dream makers and action takers, and also those who value going slow and savoring the moments in between. This is the essence of living a zero wasted days life, and I welcome you to the Zero Wasted Days podcast. And welcome back to Zero Wasted Days. I am super excited to be welcoming Amber Lilyestrom onto my podcast today. And it is extra special because Amber and I actually started working together. She was my very first business mentor back in 2019. And I joined Amber's mastermind back in 2019. And ever since, I have followed her journey, and it's just been instrumental in the foundational parts of my business. So welcome, Amber.
Thanks, Suzanne. I'm so excited to be here.
It just feels like a real full circle kind of moment, back 2019, where I joined your program, and I was looking at the Amber influence in my life, everything from, my journal to my little, trophy that you gave back at the retreat years ago.
Yeah.
No, that definitely isn't the same with all of the coaches, because I have worked with different coaches and gone to different places around in the coaching world. And this definitely, I don't think, has been the case with all the coaches that I've worked with. But I think just, you were very instrumental in that first, pillar foundational piece of my journey. And so, yeah, I'm just honored and excited at the same time.
Yeah, me too. And I'm really proud of you. It's just been so cool to watch your journey unfold. And, you've been a rock star since day one. And so just thank you for the opportunity to come and connect here in this iteration, and just thinking about, who we were in 2019, and not only just us as people, as individuals in our own worlds, but then how the world changed, and then how business intersects with that. And now here we are in 2023, and it's all just kind of wild. So
totally. And your life and business has continued to, well, particularly your life has continued to grow and expand beyond your own dreams. And in having you here, I've given some thought to, the questions I wanted to ask you, and not just ask you, some of the same questions I've been having so far, because I really feel like there's a profound nature to the work that you do. And, your brand new website has a really poignant quote on it, which is, your current reality is a reflection of what once was. And I really love this, and I'd love you to share a little more about how your journey here, and over the last, kind of almost 10 years as an entrepreneur, 10 years later, what wisdom you can share and you can kind of give us now that you can look back on that 10 years to inspire and kind of reflect on, now that you have that beauty of hindsight.
Yeah, what a cool question. I think that the me that I get to be today is a result of this sort of insatiable hunger to liberate myself from suffering and from the patterns and the paradigms that I was subscribed to through just, being a human and raised by fellow humans and in society, and just, all these sort of tracks that we kind of get ourselves into. And then I've always been this person who's just very curious and asks a lot of questions. It's actually like my primary method of coaching, is just asking a lot of questions and reflecting to my clients, because the reality is I don't know what's best for them. I couldn't even pretend to know that. How do I know? But what I do know is that I have curiosity around why things are a certain way, and can help my clients really see with a broader perspective what might be possible if they consider new perspectives. And so I think if I reflect on the last almost 10 years here, and, just birthing this business into being, but most of all, just this version of myself, who's a mother to two babies and a wife to my best friend, Ben, and living, a life that is just, it's really abundant and really fulfilling. And I think the other piece is I just get to be really present every day.
Mm.
All of those things were the deep cravings that I had for myself back then. And I wasn't living that. I was working at, warp speed pace. And
Mm.
I was reflecting on it this morning, actually, in prep for our interview. I was thinking about how my kids were chasing each other on the floor this morning. And, I was just there in my pajamas drinking tea. And I just thought to myself, I would be dressed. I would have my, my work clothes on.
Yeah.
I would have to be, my kids would probably have to go to like some sort of care situation, we would just be doing life so differently. And I just had this moment of like grace and gratitude for it, but also just the confirmation of like, right, but we're not, because I made the choices that I made to design life like this, because this is in integrity and alignment with how I actually want to live my life.
100%, 100%. I love that. I was having a similar thought last night when we were sitting out, or we had friends over for Easter and Easter Monday with no family here. We have friends. That's our family. And I was sitting outside after they'd left by the bonfire, just with my husband, Rob. And I was like, I would have been in like panic mode going back into my job the next day, and kind of like rallying myself up and rallying myself to get back to the pace where now, the beauty of it is that we can have a pace that we want to have, that our business slots into, as opposed to like this hustle pace. We can be in this beautiful flow and have us dictate it, as opposed to the other way around, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so another quote, which you're very, very well known for, is if the dream is in you, it's for you. And it is on the front of that journal. And I know personally, this quote has been a real guiding light for me, and I'm sure many others. And I'd love to know how you've seen examples of this in your life, in your business, in different clients, and how do we know that the dream we have in us is worth pursuing?
Yeah. I think the most honest version of this story that I can share is in 2021, we went through IVF. And so we struggled with secondary infertility, and we tried and, eventually it was like, okay, we've really got to go this route. And so we did IVF, and the first cycle didn't take. And so we were not pregnant. And then we went right into another cycle, and we ended up getting pregnant, from the two embryos that were transferred. And so there was a positive pregnancy test. And I remember just being kind of like in total disbelief. I was like sitting in my kitchen with my brand new book, Paddle Home, that had just arrived from the publisher, was going out to the world in like 2 weeks, but I was sending it out to my Ignite Your Soul Summit virtual audience, because mind you, it was still in the pandemic. And I had my book, my dream book that I wanted to write, with two pregnancy tests that were positive on top of it. And I have that picture. And I just remember Suzanne just being like, this is insane. Like, it's almost too much for me to,
Wow.
like process. These are two of my biggest dreams in my life. Obviously the baby part was my first, but also very close second was to write that book. So here I am, and I'm just like, it's a glorious day. It was April of 2021. So I'm just kind of like 2 years later, kind of going through similar sensations of the date, it's like April 8th, 2021. And then, fast forward, I think a week or so, we were like going through all the blood work, and my blood levels weren't rising to the levels that they were supposed to. So I ended up had to go, had an ultrasound, and unfortunately there was no gestational sac. And it was really heartbreaking. Like the whole thing was super heartbreaking, because my body thought I was pregnant, but I wasn't, with a viable pregnancy at least. And so, I ended up I had a miscarriage and of what was happening in my body. And I just knew at the end of it that I just couldn't go through that again. I just couldn't. It had been such a long road with my body. I also had a near-death experience when my daughter was born. So it was just like a lot of things as it relates to this body of mine. And I just knew like this wasn't the way. And I was shattered, I was like absolutely heartbroken. And I actually walked with the question, like, if the dream is in me, is it actually for me? I really sat with the crushing blow of thinking that might not be true. And I was in such grief, for a while. But very just sort of like in the whisper and the quiet of our heartbreak, we serendipitously connected with an adoption consultancy, and we signed up with them, but we just were not really able to proceed with anything at that moment. It was like, this is just all way too much right now. And, I think the other thing that was really tricky too is like, I was 39 right at that time, being met with the idea that my fertility was complete. And so that was like a whole nother huge pill to swallow that I hadn't anticipated even being a thing I'd have to think about,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a big deal. And so there's just this combo pack of all these things. And we just healed and went slow with it. And I explored that question. And, I kind of felt like I was like limping through. I remember a client saying to me, like, how did you do that? Like, how were you there for us? And how did you continue to show up? And I said, because it was a place for me to go and put my energy and love that didn't concern me. I didn't have to think about what I was grappling with. I just got to love on you and help you. And it was very nourishing for me. It was like a real gift to get to just serve and be in my work. And so it was great. And I think of any tragedies or traumas, and when I went through a divorce in my late 20s and all this, like my work was always the place where I found like refuge. It was like a place for me to just be useful and not fixate on what my heart was doing, and just love other people. And so at the end of 2021, we were officially home study approved in our adoption process. And we had been just learning, a lot over all those months and studying and understanding everything about adoption and all the things, all the dimensions and dynamics that go into it. And fast forward to March of 2022, and I was on retreat in Florida leading my Elevate Mastermind. And I had just kind of like made this decision. We did this exercise where I asked the group to go back to the moment before a story that was like a limiting story, a label and identity became part of how they knew themselves, like before that existed. And so I went back to this moment of the version of me before the story of infertility was my story. And it was such a powerful exercise because I had never thought about that before. And I brought us to this, we had this bonfire, this beautiful kind of ceremony thing. And I just said, let's write that down and let's burn it. And so I burned the story of infertility, and I just refused to keep that as my identity because it wasn't who I was, and ultimately I have a biological daughter. We did have fertility treatments. I was 31 when we conceived Donnie, but I was like living in this saying I was infertile. I was like, well, of course, if you just, this is what you've chosen. This is your identity. And who knows if I'd ever be able to have a baby, but it wasn't supposed to go that way. So I burned the story and I asked for signs, and I just like lived in the present. And I made the decision to sort of cross over this threshold and just believe in our baby without conditions, without attachment, without knowing what was going to happen. But I just said to Ben, like, we just have to believe in our baby. And of course we had opened the portal, like deciding to go forth with adoption, but we weren't trying to control how that was going to happen. And we just started saying yes to like every case that would come through. And on the day we got back, in another lifetime we couldn't have known, our son was born in Florida, and we got a little case that afternoon that he was here, and we got a phone call within 24 hours of that, and the birth parents had chosen us, and we were on a plane the next morning, like way before the sun, and we were there, and we got to adopt our son Alex on the 15th of March 2022. And it was just like so many things just kind of clicked into place, Suzanne, where it was like, oh, like it was always happening like this. It was always unfolding. I just couldn't see it. We couldn't see it. And so it's that, the Steve Jobs quote of, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only do it looking back, and everything made sense. And I really believe it, to your point with looking at the clients that I serve and what the process of living into their dreams does for them.
Yes.
Like how it creates who they become and how it teaches them and how it shows them. It's just, I have not seen a time where a dream wasn't of service, even if it didn't come to full fruition the way they thought it would, that it didn't serve some really important purpose on the path to help them evolve into who they were meant to be.
Yeah. And I love what you said, not to mention the goosebumps that you've got me. And I don't know how you tell that story without crying. But I love how you said in the whispers, in the quiet, it's so often that we find, and I go straight to the word solutions, but we find guidance.
Yeah.
I giggle at myself in finding that word solutions, because in my own journey, in my own healing journey, in my own journey inward, I have realized that I look for solutions, and I look for band-aids, and I look for ways of fixing things. And I've also attracted a lot of clients who are looking for band-aid solutions, who are looking for a fixer.
Yeah.
And, this is the journey of entrepreneurship, is, the first for 3 or 4 years of me becoming a business coach was a lot of leaning on the things that I felt the most comfortable doing, which was strategy, which was, let's look at your strategy. And, of course, like energetics and mindset was always there, but I leaned on this so heavily that I attracted a lot of people into my
Yeah.
world that were looking just for that, and for someone who could fix it, who could do what I had done, and I could do it to a certain extent. But we all know, you and I both know, that that's such a small part of it. And in the whispers and in the quiet of actually getting quiet with ourselves is where the real answers lie.
Yeah. Every time.
Every time. So when things get tough for clients in particular, how do you keep believing? Like, what are some strategies? What are things, I go to the strategies, what are some things that you do to help clients or yourself through those times when it gets really tough?
Yeah. Well, I got the word held tattooed on my wrist recently because after Alex came, it was sort of like the jig was up, like any part of me that wanted to go to that storyline of it's never working out for me, like kind of martyry victim-y vibes. It just didn't fly anymore. It was kind of like that's like the most hypocritical thing. Like you just can't even pretend that that's true. And so I will bring my clients back to the reference points of those experiences for them on their journeys and remind them of the miraculous nature of their existence and the miraculous nature of their dreams. Because, I actually just had a retreat here in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, called the Ignite Your Business Retreat. And the first exercise we kicked the day off was having every single woman in the room write their dream on an index card and then write their name on it and then hand it in. And then what we did was we passed them all around the room and had every single person stand up and read someone's dream out loud so that we could all bear witness to it and hold it. And the really fascinating thing, and what I love so much about an exercise like this, is there are never two dreams that are the same. Ever. In the history of people. I do this exercise I do it all the time. And I've never one time in one room had a person say the exact same dream as another person. And I look at them and I go, well, how could that be? Because most of our inner critics sit here and say, well, your dream's not that original. Everybody wants, it's like, it's not even that good, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And so I remind people, my podcast is now called Ignite Your Dream, because I really am all about this whole dream thing, because I find it's like, try talking to a person who's not willing to be honest about what their dream or their vision is, or says that they don't matter, and be excited in that conversation. I don't know. Like, it's just, I want to know what a person is about. Like, what are you dreaming into? What are you creating? Like, what lights you up? If you don't have that, I don't know, like, I don't know how we breathe without that. And so that's really the place that I point my clients back to. And here's the second piece to this as a coach that I would love for you to hear. It's that me as a mentor and as a coach, I don't have any drama with you about your dream. I just believe you. So when you tell me I want to rebuild this farmhouse and make it my modern home for my family to live in, and it's my dream, and it's in the countryside, and it's la la la, like, I'm just like, tell me more. What kind of floors are we going to have? Like, tell me about the beams. I don't have any doubt about the validity of your dream. I just believe you. And so I remind them of that. And I just say, lean in, because we're going to figure out how to carve the path. And of course, I have the business acumen and all that strategy stuff, activation stuff that I can apply to then creating a plan and a pathway that really is energetically aligned, that really is focusing on all of the things that work, including quantum mechanics and the universal laws, and like all these pieces blending together to create a physical reality that feels totally amazing.
Yeah. I love that. And I tell my clients often that I'll believe in your dream with you. I have a vested interest in helping carve that path. And when you can come with, obviously, the depth of energetic and, like you said, quantum work that you do, together with the power of smart strategies, you've taken 10 years to see what works and doesn't work. And sure, there's probably still strategies out there that even we don't know about. That's where the magic, the magic happens. But I never knew, I never really kind of contemplated a lot of the work that I was going to have to do. My journey in entrepreneurship, leaving corporate, has been about 10 years long, 4 years as a business coach. But this has been the most extraordinary, because, I have learned and unpacked the power of healing the traumas and diving into the conditioning and, reconnecting to myself and regulating the nervous system and all the things I never realized when I first left the agency to be an entrepreneur. I never realized that those were part of building a business. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I know how powerful that has been for you, how important that piece is. It's not even a piece, it's just forever interwoven. And I'd love to know, like, what have you done so that energetically your soul and your mind was showing up to build the most amazing business?
Hmm. I mean, I think it's such an ongoing commitment. And I think that there's an opportunity for things to fall away. It's like it's really a letting go process,
Yeah.
of just like, what are all the frames and the stories I've told myself about how I have to be. And when you compare notes, right, with that question to what your experiences have been in the past in your life, it's fascinating to see how much is there and how much conditioning and how much programming. And, especially when you bring in topics like money and, worth and value and positioning and, it's just like all of the things, right? It's entrepreneurship is just life school, and it's super, super, super powerful because your stuff just is going to come right up to the surface. And so I think that's, for me, it's like having great mentorship and having support from all sides on that inner work stuff. Like, I don't have a business strategist, like, coach. In fact, when I was working with one a couple years ago, he was like, you don't need a business coach. He was like, you just don't. You know what you're doing, and you just call bullshit on basically like everything that I offer to you. And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, I love you. And he's like, no, you just don't. You don't need it. You need just support in the way of like human support, And so I have a mentor that I've been working with since, I don't know, maybe 2017, Rosemary Bradison. And she's just, I'm so grateful for her and the ways in which she just shows up and holds with me as I'm navigating life dynamics and things like that. And that's really most of what the challenges are. I think like the business stuff it really can be play when you peel back the like making it about your self-worth stuff. Like when you realize that's not relevant at all. And it's more about like, it's just, we've been conditioned, Suzanne, to think that everything is about our self-worth. And because we grew up in a paradigm of having to prove ourselves for love in most cases. And so of course we would think that, but your clients already think that you can help. They don't question your credibility. They're just like, oh my gosh, give me the good stuff, like give me the invitation. And so the biggest work is that breaking through that barrier of like allowing yourself to be fully seen and fully expressed and fully embodied to share the fire that you're here to share. And so that's the place where I find myself really doubling down, because most of the clients I work with, they're not that confused about what they should be doing and how to roll it out and all that. Like, they know what to do. They are just paralyzed by the patterning and by the old stories and by the rules. I'll use air quotes when I say that, for who they believe they have to be in order to be acceptable, in order to be loved, in order to be safe.
So many women, they freeze, right? They get into the nervous system, will just freeze, and they're smart, can have PhDs and be stuck in indecision. And it's the nervous system speaking at that point. And I think, it's such an important thing that you said, the first thing that we have to do is let things go, like actually let go. And that releasing stage of energetic recalibration is and we have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, on a constant basis. And you mentioned something around releasing also creates that space, right? Like, obviously, zero wasted days. And my mission with this business is about helping people, create that space and help them see that, life is so important, that life comes first. I know you live and you embody this philosophy 1000% and believe very strongly in it. How tomorrow on a Wednesday, like I have a no desk Wednesday, you have a no desk Wednesday as well. What's shown you that life first is such an important thing, and how do you, practice that?
Yeah. I mean, I had a near-death experience when my daughter was born. And so everything became pretty clear that we've got it mostly wrong in terms of how we've set up, our jobs, our careers, our focal points. I was doing a series of stories this morning on my Instagram, and one of the things that I was thinking about was like, being someone who was born in the 80s, I really feel like there was always this idea that we needed to, like, deprivation was something that was valiant, if you will. So like, I remember my mom and her Jane Fonda workouts. And I remember like all the things that they had like for bodies in the 80s, like you be smaller and skinnier and wear these like weird suits that you can sweat in and all this stuff. Right.
I
And it
taught
was such a,
aerobics, so I completely understand that.
yeah. So it was like such a focus on make yourself like smaller and
Mm,
deprive yourself and like don't enjoy anything. Like real, like true pleasure was sort of a shameful thing. And this morning I was eating a strawberry with whipped cream on it. And I just had this thought of like, oh my gosh, like years ago, I would have been like, you can't eat whipped cream.
mm,
What? I'm like, this is so good. It's like fresh whipped cream on a strawberry. I'm like, you better believe I'm going to freaking eat this thing. And how I just don't even think of those things anymore. But I really lived like that. And I think about like my place of work. It was like pay your dues and like basically just like suffer,
mm.
just be in pain all the time, work yourself to exhaustion point, and then you win because you're like so tough. And I would say, Suzanne, that you and I and everybody listening to this, like we've already got the tough trophies.
Mm.
Like, yep, we're pretty darn tough. I don't need to prove that anymore. I am complete in proving that. But it doesn't mean that it's not still wired in you to think that you still have to operate like that.
Mm.
And so that's like this very weird sort of meta flip kind of thing where you just have to look at, oh yeah, like that's what gets rewarded and that's what gets celebrated. And I just call BS on it. You know, I remember sitting at a table with a mentor at the time who was a really, really well-known podcaster and person out in this personal development space. And I said, if you could identify any blind spots for me, or is there anything that you see that could be a huge growth zone that I'm just kind of missing?
Mm.
I was like, what do you think? And he goes, and this isn't actually even the part that's relevant, but I'm going to say it. And some of you guys might get triggered by it. A man telling me this. I wasn't triggered at all. I was actually grateful for it. But he said, I think you should work with a personal trainer. And I said, oh, okay. Yeah. And he's like, you're a former Division I athlete and you're not, I can tell that you're not like your athlete is not online right now. Like she's not, you don't have a lot of space for her. And I was like, that's a really good point. Yeah. Like I really need her. She's really valuable to me. He wasn't telling me like you're fat and you need to lose weight.
Oh,
It wasn't saying any of that. He was just like, this is like for personal performance. And that's the way that I heard it. And I was like, yeah, that would feel good to do that. And he said, because, you know, and this is the part, he goes, when you're like working 40 hours plus a week, you gotta have the time and the space for that. And I looked at him and I was like, what? 40 hours. I was like, who's working 40 hours a week? And he goes, well, aren't you working 40? I was like, I like laughed lovingly in his face. I said, brother, I'm not even working 20 hours a week.
Mm.
And he's like, how do you have, $500,000+ business when you were only working? And I was like, oh, well, let me school you for a minute. And at the time I only had 3,000 people on my email list. And so to me, that moment was really important because it was like, I got to hear from somebody I was learning from the way that he's living his life, and he doesn't have children, still doesn't, but he probably will at some point, and how I've designed my life and how these are vastly different things and where our value systems are. Like I think often about scaling, Suzanne, and I always think to myself, like, what are you scaling for?
Mm.
Like, let's talk about that because I love the idea of making a shit ton of money, but also I will not, like, that math has to work for the life that I'm living. So like today's a day where I have 3.5 hours ish of calls, and I was supposed to have a team call right after this. And I just messaged my team and I was like, it's going to be 70 degrees tomorrow. I don't want to spend that hour in between that podcast and my coaching call sitting on a call with you. I'm like, well, let's just Vox. We don't need to. I was like, go to the beach, you guys, go outside. We've been sitting in like winter here.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you all cool with that? And they're all like, yeah, like peace signs up. I'm like, let's just Vox if we have anything, but we don't have anything super pressing this week. So let's just skip our team call.
Yeah.
And so it's things like that, because I need to be out by 3:00. I need to be done. I am done every day of the days that I take calls, which is really only 3 days a week, because I'm going to my daughter's to pick her up to take her to theater class and to field hockey practice.
Yeah.
And so that's it. It's like, there's non-negotiables.
Totally.
And my business doesn't get to overfunction and overtake things. And therefore, I then have to make it work with the allotted time that's available in order to achieve the objectives that I've set for what I want to do in my business. And that's how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do have a very unique thing, with the intersection of motherhood and business, and
Yes.
it can be
Yes.
messy, right?
Oh
But
yeah. I mean, I'm just like watching the baby monitor right now on the floor that it's like up in my loft. The reception for it doesn't always sync up, but he's still sleeping. So this is
yeah,
good. We're doing good. Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm great. It's like, listen, these are the days. I
totally.
don't get a replay on my 12-month-old son, my 9-year-old daughter, and I've been with her from the same age. I left my corporate job when she was 9 months
Yeah.
and was there, did the nap time hustle for all of those years leading up until, we started preschool, and then we did a bunch of homeschooling in the mix there too. These years of my children being small is a one-time deal in
100%.
this lifetime of mine. And, it is so precious. And it is so, I wanted it so badly. I wanted it so deeply. Like, no way will I sacrifice that time, and it's not a scarcity thing. It's like an enrichment. It's a joy thing. It's like a deep presence. It's a reverence thing. And I love helping women build their lives around the values and what they actually want
Yeah.
for their life. And with no, like, we don't have to water it down. Like, let's just say the whole thing. What do you actually want? And if you're not actually living into that, then we have some work to do.
Yeah, I love that. You said 3 or 4 things that would be perfect segues into, 3 or 4 other questions. But one of the ones I wanted to ask you first is that intersection where motherhood and business come together, and that messiness. I know there's so much power in us sharing vulnerably more, more of that, and sharing the reality of the messiness, and not all pulled together, view on life. Why do you think that that's, important for you to share and show the true power of that?
Well, because it's just honest.
Mm.
It's real. I don't know, like, why we got this idea that we have to be all perfect. It's like, am I a better coach because I'm wearing different pants? Like, because the
Pants?
monitor's not right there? Yeah. Like, I don't know. I just, no. Yeah. And I'm not like a new mom. My daughter's 9. So I've been doing this, for almost a decade here, technically with pregnancy inside of it. Right. So I've been a mother for 10 years, which is like, oh my gosh, it's hard to say out loud. Like, okay, Suzanne, whoa, that's just going to trigger me right now. But I've been in this motherhood chair for a long time, as long as I've been in business. So I've always had to negotiate these two things together. They've always been a package deal for me, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I might not have even created a business if I didn't have children, because here's the other cold hard fact. Corporate careers are not really set up for mothers at all. And if a mother wants to be, not all moms, not to say they don't want to be with their children, but they like yep, I drop you off, you go do your thing, I go to my thing, we come back together. This isn't an opinion column on any of that. What it is your life set up the way you want to do it? Is motherhood set up the way you want to do it? And in order to function in this society, like, we need multiple incomes. At this point, I'm the primary breadwinner, at least in this season of life. My husband has a podcast production business. But that challenge is one I will step up to the plate for every single day, over and over again, especially because it's possible and it's doable. And I think we have to talk about the full spectrum of what that experience feels like. I had this thought the other day. I actually would love to ask you this question. I said to Ben, I go, it's actually a lot more comfortable for me to be doing business stuff than it is to be fully present in my motherhood. Like, I think that I'm better at, like, writing an email, creating content, like thinking up ideas, than I am at, like, dealing with the spilled water, constantly, like, we're in that season now of, like, hold me, don't hold me. I want that. Oh, I'm going to freak out, tantrums about stuff. Yeah. So I just have moments where I'm like, whoa, it would be so much easier for me to just go and, like, write an Instagram post right now than sit here in the kitchen and navigate this.
Yeah. And I think there's something there around things that we like to control, and, children to the extent we can't control,
no,
we can't control, but we kind of want to, but there's also, such a big impact, with all the little bits of every day, to be these humans. I've got a 15-year-old who's like, and I'm looking at, the next few years and him going out on his own. And that is 100 times harder than sitting here and writing emails and launching.
So much harder. It's so much harder. So I think, like, also just acknowledging that like, Motherhood is challenging. It is some really, really intense work. And it has been such an incredible teacher for me and continues to be. And I'm super grateful for it. It humbles me.
Mm.
Woo, but I'm also grateful that I get breaks and I get to come sit down and have this
Totally.
conversation. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I love the fact that we have partners in life that allow us to do that. That's
Yep.
also been important to me to be able to prioritize myself like that. I call it life and self first embodiment, like truly taking care of number one, because when I
Yep.
did my first list of, who my priorities are in my life, I put my husband and my kids, and I was never on that list.
Right.
And, putting myself at the top of that list was step one of my own healing and my own coming back to myself. But it's a constant process of, trying to stay grounded where our feet are at and being present as a mom, as a wife, and loving ourselves. I think it is quite a beautiful duality to hold with the, keeping your sights set on the vision, the dream, being made for more. How do you think you do that? How do you stay grounded and keep the vision as well?
Well, I think it goes back to if the dream is in you, it's for you. It's just like, I understand the inevitability of it. And I actually enjoy the sort of conception process of dreams. I had something recently come forth and I thought to myself, like the thing happening will be like Christmas morning in a way, but it's like, I love Christmas Eve. I like it actually more. I love the feeling of watching the thing unfold and knowing inevitably that because that dream is there and I can feel it in my gut and I can feel it like the fire, that it's a real thing. It's not just some sort of like obligatory thing that I'm trying to say that I want, but I can like feel the momentum of it.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I love the buildup of the thing coming and being like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder how this is going to unfold.
Are you a generator?
Yeah.
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 And Enneagram 3 as well, I think.
No, I'm a 9.
A 9.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But 9s go to 3 in growth. So it's play for me, achievement. What I've really realized, I thought I was a 3 for most of my life. And then I found out I'm a 9, which is the peacemaker, which makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And that the 3, we go to 3 in growth. So when I'm achieving and creating things, I'm growing, like it's helping stretch me. And that feels like much more resonant because I'm not motivated by winning, except for in soccer. I'm very motivated by winning. Anything like athletic, I'm very motivated. But like when it comes down to it, having the big money, numbers and I don't give a shit. I don't care. It literally, and that was the part where I was like, I don't think I'm a 3 because this stuff just doesn't motivate me. It doesn't inspire me. It doesn't fire me up. A feeling of peace, a feeling of contentment, a feeling of like isness that like, oh, okay. Like that's what makes me feel the most joyful. Yeah. And like that creating harmony thing. And so that was a real revelation of like, oh, okay, now that feels like it fits.
Yeah, I love that creation process as well. So I'm constantly in that, creating. And in the run up to Christmas is definitely, once Christmas is done, I'm like, oh, well, now what? What can we create next?
Yeah.
That's interesting. The Enneagram, you thought you were a 3 and then. Yeah. And I'm going to ask one kind of strategy question because I really believe that, and you said something about it before, creating strategies in our businesses helps us obviously thrive, helps, support the life that we really desire. How do you support women in doing that? So how do you help them create the strategies and the business model? What does it mean to you to create a strategy that supports your life?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the things we do in our businesses are activations. And I think the real strategies are like the ways we design how we live. So for me, I go for a walk every morning before the day starts. It's like, I just have to go do that. And it's actually the place like where I record podcast episodes and do a lot of Voxer coaching and whatnot. But I just need to like get out there, be in nature, breathe a little bit, and it sets me up for a better day, getting those steps and just like feeling in my aliveness. And so that's important because it's like, I'm prioritizing my breath, myself, my body, my connection, right? Above what levers I'm going to pull in my business that day, like what emails I'm going to send. And so my number one strategy, and the one I'm working with my clients on the most, is like an energetic integrity, like being in integrity with oneself. Even if that means like on a given day, you feel really terrible, give yourself permission to feel how you feel, like move that thing through, go out and on your walk and cry, like express however you need to express. So to me, strategically, it's really about like, how do we show up in the most honest way possible?
Yeah.
And then we go from that place into activations in our businesses. So that would look like, my business is 99% evergreen in terms of what my offerings are. And that's by design, right? That's like in integrity with how my energy works and how I want to help. I'm a responder.
Yeah.
I'm a coach. I love mentoring people. I don't like open, closed cart launch stuff. It just skeeves me out. It doesn't feel in harmony for me.
Yeah.
And so I don't design my business like that. I have clients who thrive on that. So we set it up in that way. And that's the activation model that we design.
Yeah.
Others are like, wow, that's a revelation. You have an entirely evergreen business model. How do you do that? And I help them philosophically understand why they might consider that, and then how to implement elements of activation and strategy to then move the needle in their business. But we really start from a very high level, sort of top down, spiritual, energetic, somatic approach to then decide what you're going to then do in your business. And, most of my clients will say in the testimonials, it's like, they'll say, Amber changed my entire life. And I'm always like, you changed your life. I just held up the possibilities and I walked with you in it. But yeah, like this coaching does create complete life transformation, because we're not just working on your business. We're at a higher level, which will then inevitably water down, trickle down into the business transformation as well.
Yeah, I love that. The business model, I guess you're calling the strategy, is the thing that's helping you. Going out for your walk in the morning is helping you, calibrate at that energetic frequency that you want to be at to be able to serve your business. And then it's, whatever levers that you need to,
right.
move around in your business.
We're just like taking the business strategy conversation that I think from a frequency level is like at a lower vibration typically. And we're just moving it up to like life strategy and understanding, like, for those of us that are listening to this, your life strategy is being an entrepreneur. That's, I have to have a vocation that translates into me bringing money in a particular way that's aligned with what lights me up the most. And so my life strategy is to choose a career path like the one that I have.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm going to finish, because I know we share a strong belief in, embodying and living in our values. We've already talked a little bit about that. Yeah. And one of my values is travel and adventure. Surprise, surprise. And when I'm living in this, I truly, whether it's for work or life, I really feel so aligned and excited, just about everything. When we go off on a family trip, even for a weekend, it's just, everything feels right with the world. So my last question is about travel and adventure. And I would love to know the top 3 places that you have visited and the 3 places that you'd like to visit. That's a bit of a fun question to finish.
Yeah, the top 3 places I have visited. Well, I'm a real homebody, Suzanne. So I love where I live. I'm going to say that Portsmouth, New Hampshire, this like New England area is very special. And so I would say I love it here so much. The second place is my family's favorite place to go on vacation is Grayton Beach, Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, right on the Gulf Coast. It's very magical there for us. And we are we're working on getting to a point of getting an investment property down there and working on that with a short-term rental. And, but I host retreats there every year. So that's my second. And then, I love Seattle. I love Seattle, Washington. I went kayaking up in the Orcas Islands and got to see orcas in the wild. And my best friend from college lives up there. So I would say that's my other place. It's a very different kind of place, but there's a lot of really cool stuff there and friends that live there that I love very much. So, and then places I would want to go, I would love to go to Alaska. I think that would be a really cool adventure for my family, like wildlife, nature type things. Yeah. Isn't this so funny? Hawaii, Ani wants to go I've been to Kauai. I really loved it. Ani wants to go to Maui. So that's a family trip that we want to schedule. And the third place, I don't have one right now. I'll just have to leave that kind of open-ended. Yeah. I'm like, I've been to Europe and stuff, but it's just, there's so much in the travel part.
Yeah.
Is just like so chaotic, and I loved, Africa, but like, let me get 1 million vaccines. So I'm just like not, You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's always like a cost with things that I think isn't as exciting to me as like, again, like the harmonizing, like the beingness of it. Maybe I'll say Scotland. We'll throw that in there because my ancestors are from Scotland. That'll be my third. Yeah.
I
It's
just
not
think
too
it's
far.
always,
It's like not too far,
no,
you know?
no, it's
Yeah.
just over the pond. It's not quite Africa.
Mhm.
You don't need to get vaccinations. I just think it's so interesting. I love to hear, just where, and I think it's very nourishing, and I love that all your places, most of them other than Scotland were in the US, and that's
Yeah.
where you are. And,
Yeah. Just like
that's,
home.
yeah.
Home, and home is like my other word, it's like
Yeah.
a sense of home. And I think that's enough. It's okay. You
Yeah.
don't have to say to Suzanne, I want to go to all these, like, if you don't really want to, you don't have to say that.
No.
Yeah.
And freedom means, freedom and travel means different things to everybody, right? Like for some
Totally.
people, moving from Canada to Australia to France sounds like a nightmare. Like for you, that probably sounds like not a dream.
Yeah. I'm like, not really into it, but love that was your story. Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's so
love,
cool. It's so cool.
I love how that's actually that helps demonstrate that.
Yes.
Which is what I say all the time. We can redefine how we do business. It's up to you how you do your business. It's up to you how you, schedule your days, create your business model, all that stuff. I feel very, in tune with everything you talk about and always have, but we can have very, very different, dreams.
I think we should, I think it's like, that's what makes the world really cool, is that we don't all have the same favorite singer or the same favorite play or color or, it's just, that stuff just makes me so excited. People think, oh, they're doing all this comparison stuff. And I'm like, you can't, like, we're all so unique. And that's actually the magical part of being you in the world and in this lifetime.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. And I think that that's just a perfect note to finish on. But I so appreciate you being here. And I thank you. And I'm honored that you said yes to come onto the podcast and share your wisdom and all the goodness that you have with me today. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm super inspired by you, and just keep on rocking. And thanks everybody for tuning in to this amazing podcast.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Zero Wasted Days. I truly hope that you found it to be valuable and inspirational as you create and you grow your own business and work towards living more life first. I would love you to subscribe, to like this video, and of course, if you have any comments, drop them in here below. Also, if you tag me on socials, I would love to get to know you. I love connecting with my audience, so be sure to tag me at Suzanne Actison or at @ZeroWastedDays_. And I will see you inside the DMs as well as here for the next episode next week.